Well, we're jumping into a new series today that I'm excited about. It's called Philippians, The Path to Joy. And we're going to be camping out in the book of Philippians for a handful of weeks here and really starting to look at the whole idea of joy, which is an important one. Because when we're talking about joy and having joy, I think everybody wants joy, right? At the end of the day, I don't know anybody who would say, I really don't want, I'm not interested in joy. But when we're talking about joy, we're not talking about the plastic fake it till you make it kind of joy. That's not what we mean when we say joy. We're not talking about faking happiness and pretending and thinking positive, pretending like life isn't difficult or that things aren't hard. That's not it. What we're talking about is a gift given to us by God. Joy is created by Him. And it's something we're able to experience regardless of the kind of difficulty that we might be facing in life. That we might be in super tough circumstances, and somehow we're able to find this joy in the middle of it, which is kind of wild and kind of exciting and encouraging that that's available. And what we're going to do is we're going to dive into, like I said, this book of the Bible called Philippians, and it's written by a guy named Paul, who's going to be actually writing from jail, believe it or not. So he's a guy who would have, he started a relationship with Jesus. This is about 2,000 years ago in the Roman Empire. And he was a religious leader. He's a guy who's a leader in the early church. And he would have gone around and told a lot of people about Jesus. And as he did that, he actually suffered a lot for it. He got himself in trouble because often people would think because he was talking about this king named Jesus, that was a threat to the government. Often that would be a piece that got him in trouble. And often that would cause him great suffering. And so in this situation, Paul is going to be a guy that finds himself in jail, right? In this situation that is obviously not ideal. And he's going to be writing and modeling for us how to find joy in the midst of rough situations, which is amazing. I love to just watch this. And so he's writing mail. He's writing a letter to a church that he helped start. And as he does that, what I'm fascinated by is how the guy can have so much joy from a jail cell. How do you do that? Right? So we're going to go on a journey and watch him show us how to do that and how to model that in a way that is, I think, profound and probably supernatural. And we're going to start to see some of that today, but we're kind of just starting the conversation as we open this book up. And over the next several weeks, we'll start to really unpack it. But here's what he says right here in the beginning of this book of Philippians. He says this in 1:3. He says, I thank my God every time I remember you. In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. So being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. So what Paul's doing here is he's writing from jail, and as he's doing that, what's on his mind are these people, all right, far away in a different city, in a different place, in a different circumstance, and he's able to have joy in the middle of this as he dwells on and thinks about these people that he loves and he has a passion for, right? He says, I thank my God every time I remember you, and I remember the ways that you partnered with me in telling people about Jesus, the way you continue to do that. And he says, basically, I have confidence that what God started in you, he's going to finish that. He's going to bring that on to completion. And Paul, somehow, he's able to have this joy from this seat, even though this is obviously not awesome. And we're not going to go into this saying that Paul never asked the question, God, why'd you put me in jail? Maybe he did that. We don't know. Certainly other letters that Paul wrote, he would have said things like, I'm despairing even of life. Did Paul ever get discouraged or frustrated or run out of gas? Paul did. right? And if you're a mom, you need to hear that. He ran out of gas, you run out of gas. I know that. I love it. Somebody said the other day, for moms of small children, days are 87 hours long. Right? It's kind of true. It's like a time warp. Somehow the day is it just never ends. Right? If you're a stay-at-home mom, you've experienced some of that. But right, you run out of gas. You might ask the question, why is it like this? Paul is not ignorant of the imperfection of his situation. He's not ignorant of the pain of it. Maybe he even grieved some of it. Certainly that might even have been an appropriate response at times. But somehow he was able, through all of that, over some time, to land in a place where he gets his heart and his mind fixed on other people that he loves and he cares about. And he's able to find joy in that process. Right? Of saying, I'm not just going to be consumed with me. I'm going to choose to be focused and to be intentional and to be joyful thinking about who you have been and who you are. Right? He finds joy in being others focused in his mindset and in his heart set. Right? And I think that's absolutely critical. And I think moms, you tend to be really good at this. Right? You tend to be really, really good at this. When I think about how often moms are in imperfect situations caring for people in their life, whether that's physical or just taxing people around or just being genuinely interested in the humans that they're investing into, it kind of blows my mind. You know, we've got 4 kids, and so it's pretty typical at my house that a cold will start with one human and then make its way to all of the rest of the humans, right, and consume them all. And I'll watch, like, Lori will get a cold, and I'm always kind of amazed at how she'll just pound cold medicines and kind of just keep going. Right, moms, you kind of know how this works. You get sick, and then you just kind of just keep going a lot of times. And people need taxied around, and things need to continue, and people need fed, right? And you, like, keep moving. And then I'll get that cold eventually, and it's like I'm on my deathbed. Right? I'm like, I'm going to stay in bed all day long, and it's as if I'm dying. I'm like, somebody bring me toast, you know? But can you bring me water? I'm just a big baby, right? And somehow moms, when you find yourselves in the midst of difficulty, imperfect situations, you're sick, you're tired, you're exhausted, somehow you're able to find the vision of investing and sometimes even finding joy in doing it into other people. And then there's just something about, I want us to catch this, there's something about the interchange here where joy is found. I just think it's just a big deal. It's a big deal because maybe now more than ever, it's easy to become hyper-consumed with my own set of issues. If I want to research and watch YouTube videos and Google about how to get out of my own jail and how to make my situation different and how to cope and how to fix whatever thing I'm in the middle of that I want to change, I can become maybe arguably more consumed with that than ever before. If I want to bounce around and become consumed by how to make myself not feel the difficulty of this thing I'm in the middle of, I could kind of do that all the time. Right? And it exists, and right, sometimes there's reasons that are good for that, and of course I don't. But somehow I gotta find a way to get outside of me and find vision for other people and begin to care about. There's something about that process, that arrow, where joy starts to erupt out of my life. There's just something about it. And this is what Paul is modeling for us. He's helping us to see that he, in the midst of this, is thinking about them. And he's talking to God about these people when certainly he could consume all of his time thinking about and talking to God about how to get out of jail. Fascinating how that all works. He goes on in the next few verses. He says, it's right for me to feel this way about all of you, since I have you in my heart. He says, and whether I'm in chains or defending and confirming the gospel, all of you share in God's grace with me. He says, God can testify how I long for all of you with the affection of Christ Jesus. He said, I'm grateful for you. I have an affection for you, right? There's this joy and gratitude. There's a grateful heart that's showing up here. And he's able to find things to thank God for in the midst of people's lives who are imperfect and are not quite there yet. Because that's the reality of how we all are, right? Did these people have stuff to work? Sure they did. Somehow Paul was able to have a heart that said, God, thank you for where these people have come from. Thanks for the ways that they have grown. Thanks for the ways that they have contributed and been a part of this ministry with me. I'm grateful for them. Paul, while he's got to sit down and take a pause moment here in prison, he's able to do that thing that happens to us every once in a while, where we are able to pause and realize that time has passed and see the growth of the people that we've been investing in, right? Whether that's our kids or other people in our lives. You ever have this happen? This happened the other day. I sat down and journaled and began journaling, and I started to realize, how did my kids, how did they get so old? How did my son get so tall? Right? How did they get so smart? Wait a minute, where'd the last 5 or 10 years? Where'd it go? God, thank you for who these people are becoming. You ever have that moment when you realize it's almost surreal, right? Wow, time has passed, and there's a sense of context of look where they are right now. Look at where they've come from. Look at this moment in time that I actually get to pause and see it for a second. Then we get back to the busy of doing all the stuff that we always do. Right? You guys have those moments? I do. Paul had that, I think. I think he was able to stop and to see it, and not just to see it, but to thank God for it and to capture that. And there was gratitude there, and there was joy there. Through their imperfection, through their flaws, gratitude for the growth that they had experienced. And there's something in there where joy is available for us, I think, as we invest and love the people in our lives. Now, as Paul did that, as he recognized who they were and where they'd come from, what God had begun to do in them, he also, as he mentioned a few verses ago, he mentioned that God's going to complete the work that he began in them. He had this vision for who they would continue to become. Not in spite of gratitude, not in spite of the recognition of the growth they've had. He saw that you're not going to stay here. You're going to continue to become something else. And we're going to see that vision unfold here in the next few verses. But I love that Paul's able to do both things. Often when we see how far somebody has to go, it's really easy just to get super critical and to see all the ways that they're not yet. To see all the gaps and the flaws and the missing pieces and all the stuff that you didn't do, right? It's tempting as a parent. It's tempting for me to do in my own life. But Paul doesn't do that. He stops and he says thank you to God for the growth, and he loves them even while they're being put together, even while they're not quite yet mature, while they're on their way. He's able to have affection for them and gratitude for them. But he's fully aware that they have further to go, just like he would say about himself, that there's more to grab hold of. There's more life There's more joy that can be found, and that the story doesn't stop here. It continues. And just like a parent would have vision for their children, right? A parent's going to see what and wonder, what could you become? What could God do with you? Where could you go? Who could you be? What will you be like one day? Paul had vision for this group of people that he invested himself into. He thought about them. He cared about them. And they were on his mind, And just like our kids live on our minds and the people we invest in live in our hearts, that this was his investment. And he cared about what it became, and he cared deeply. And I want you to hear this prayer we're going to look at in a minute. In fact, I want you to take a minute and jot down the verses that we're going to look at here. Just jot down the reference. Philippians 1, 9 through 11. If you have a phone, jot it down. Philippians 1 through 11, take a screenshot, whatever you want to do. Or if you're taking paper and pen or whatever, jot that down. Philippians 1, 9 through 11. This prayer is going to become important over the next several weeks. And I think it reveals for us a journey that Paul was asking God to take this group of people that he loved on. And I'm positive he wanted to go on that journey himself as well. Let's look at the verse. Here's what he says in 1, 9 through 11. He says, and this is my prayer. Okay, he's telling them, this is what I've been praying for you. This is what I've been talking to God about for you. He says that your love may abound more and more. That your love may abound more and more in knowledge and in depth of insight. Let's stop there for a minute. Here's what he's saying. He's saying, I want you and the love of God to explode in your life. In essence, he's saying, if I could pray one thing for these people that I care so deeply about, if I could want one thing for them, I would want for them to know and experience. That's what that word knowledge actually means. When I hear the word knowledge today, when you hear it, you probably hear it the way I do, which I hear knowledge as data, information. That's not what these guys would have heard when they read that word in the original language. They would have heard experience. The kind of knowledge that comes with experience. That's why we respect people that have done something for 20 or 30 years. They've got experience. They have knowledge. They've lived in it. He's saying, I'm praying that your love may grow in it, that it may grow in experience. I pray that you would experience the love of God in your life. That you would know how deeply, he prayed this at other places in the Bible, right? Other letters to other churches. I pray that you would know how deep and how wide and how high the love of God is for you. That in the depth of your failure and your sin, God has chosen beforehand to love you. That over time, as we live life, we start to learn more and more about love, and that there's an explosion of love in us as we start to understand how it is that God's love grows in us. Here's what I mean. You ever invest in people, then you know what this is like, whether you're a coach or a parent or a teacher or a mom or a dad, right? Whether you're a camp counselor, you know what this is like. When you pour out energy, you invest yourself, your time, your thought, your mind, right? Sometimes money, certainly creativity, right? When all that goes into someone, there's no way for them to fully appreciate what it is you're doing for them. They can't see it all. They can't know it all. They can maybe be grateful for a fraction of it. And it probably won't be until they begin to do that themselves and start to pour out for another that they can understand that that's what you were doing for them. And here's the beauty of the whole thing is for all of us, as we experience that I'm pouring out for you and you only kind of get it, we look back up at God and realize that God is constantly pouring out his grace and his mercy and his forgiveness and his passion and his invitation for you and me constantly. And I'm only able to receive a fraction of it. And that is the love of God. And in Paul's saying, I want your love, your experience of love, and then the love that comes through you to other people, man, I want that to abound. I want that to explode. I want that to multiply. I want that to consume your life. And notice, he doesn't say, I pray that your life gets easier. I pray that all your problems go away. I pray that you get out of your jail cell. He doesn't pray that. He doesn't pray, I pray that you have a safe life. That's fine hope. But what's higher than that, what's more important to that, to Paul than that, is that this love would be experienced by us, and then it would pour out through us. That as we know God and know him in his love, that would become who we are. Now watch where he goes with it. His prayer is loaded, which is why we're going to spend a little bit of time here. So I pray that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, in experience, and in moral wisdom. Why? It says, so that you will be able to discern what is best. When you're making decisions about life, where do I put myself? Where do I put my life? How do I move forward? What am I going to be about? When you're discerning between better and best, when you're making decisions, what's going to put a target on wisdom for you or for the people you're investing in is love consuming you. Love is what puts a target on wisdom, and it helps us to choose the best. When Paul says the best, he's not saying the easiest. He's not saying guaranteed you're gonna be rich and famous and have all your problems go away. Because being rich and famous makes all your problems go away. Everybody believes that, right? He's saying you're going to be able to discern what really matters. Hear me. What is eternal? What will last forever? The stuff that we can give ourselves to that will never burn away. The decisions that we make that years from now or decades from now or at the end of our lives, we look back and say, man, I'm really glad I did that. That was the best. It was the best thing I could have done with myself. And I'm not fully, at least in my life, I'm not sure if I'll fully ever understand this until one day when I stand before Jesus face to face. The true assessment of my life is what I'm really glad I did when I look at Jesus and when he looks at me. I'm positive that in that moment, I will reorient and rightly orient the whole of my life in all that I've done. And I know that some things will not have been best and some will. Paul's saying, guys, as with the heart of a parent, the heart of a pastor, heart of a coach, heart of a mom or dad, he's saying, I want your best. I want what's best for you. That's what we say, isn't it? Redefined in this prayer, best looks a little different. And he goes on, he says, I want you to be able to discern what is best. I want love to explode in your life because love drives out fear. And when you live out of love, you end up choosing the best. You operate out of wisdom. This is what he says, and you may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ. That when you show up before Jesus, that you look different. That what happens to you is you start to become like the person of Jesus more and more. That you may be filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus. Right? That comes through Jesus Christ to the glory and the praise of God. That as God's love consumes me more and more, I'm going to have more wisdom. I'm going to be able to choose the best more and more with my time, with my money, with my heart, with my affection, with my energy. As I choose the best, that's going to change me. That's going to mold me and make me look more and more like the person of Jesus. When Paul looks at the people that he really cares about, people he's investing into, his kids, so to say, what he's consumed by, what he's praying is this. Catch it. He's not saying, I pray that you stay out of jail. Kids. He's not saying, I pray that you stay out of difficult situations. He's not saying, I pray that your life is never hard. I pray that it's always easy. I pray that you're always comfortable. In fact, he's kind of praying the opposite. He's saying, I know that love is going to make things more challenging for you. It might even land you in difficulty itself. But I believe that this is where joy is found. To become a person of love, man, that's where the good stuff is. It's where joy is. This is where Jesus would say it's more blessed to give than to receive. Where good life is really found, where the best is really found, is actually when my life starts to look more and more like Jesus's life would look if he lived life in my skin. That is a wild thought. It's a challenging thought. It's an encouraging thought. Here's the good things. Moms, maybe catch this. One of the most important things you can do, I believe, as a parent, as a mom, and moms, I know you're doing this, is to simply love your children. To love them deeply. To accept them. To see them. To hear them. For them to know that they're known. And for them to know that you see the ugliest stuff about them and you're still there. You're not going anywhere. Why? Because you love them. And as you love your kids like that, you know what you're doing? You're fulfilling this prayer. You're causing them to know and experience the love of God for them. I don't know if there's anything better you can give them. Right? To give them the kind of love that God gives you. Not giving them everything they want. That doesn't help them. That's not what's best. But to love them unconditionally and to know them deeply and to believe that this picture is what's best. And at the end of the day, no matter where their lives travel, how windy the path is, that if they can aim here and if they become this, then that is the highest win that you could hope for. What if they never become rich? What if life's hard? What if all their own dreams don't come true? You get there, you're at the end of the day, you're going to be just fine. It's guaranteed. If what is said here is true, and I believe it with all my heart, that if our kids become this, if we become this, there won't be any regrets when we see Jesus face to face. At the end of the day, that's all that really matters. This is what Paul says. 1 Corinthians 13, it says, if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and knowledge, if I have faith that can move a mountain but don't have love, I'm nothing. If I don't have this foundation, if I don't know the love of God, and the love of God isn't pouring through me, none of this will play. You can have all the degrees you want, all the information you want. I would say we can add to that. You can make all the money you want, all the success you want, all the trophies you want, all the social success you can want. If I don't have love, I'm nothing. At the end of the day, this is the picture. This is the vision. This is the landing point. I think for Paul in his own life and what he valued so deeply for the people he was investing in. All right, so here's the question. Will we pray this prayer? Here's what I would love for us to do. Here's what I'm going to do. I would love for us to pray that prayer every day during the course of the next several weeks of this series. Would you do that? Put on your screensaver, set an alarm. Maybe you pray it 2 or 3 times a day. But would you begin to pray that prayer and begin to ask God to do that in your people? Whoever it is you're investing in, whoever it is you care about. Maybe it's your friend group, maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your team you coach, maybe it's the students you teach, maybe it's your neighbors or whatever. Your people, would you begin to pray this for them? And here's what's going to happen, because some of this I've seen and experienced. As we start to pray this for the people that we love, we start to see them differently. We start to see their wins differently. We start to see their pains differently. And we start to love and accept them the way that God loves and accepts us, right? Gratitude for where they are, vision for where they're going to go. And then maybe this is the most important question, right? Will I pray this for myself? Will I make this the place that I'm headed? And when we're saying that, when we're praying that, what we're believing by faith is that this actually matters more than any other goal I might set. Any other hope that I might have for myself. Certainly for the people in my life, but even for my own. So will we start there? God, would you change me? Would you cause me to be consumed by your love, that I might have wisdom to make decisions that are the best, that I might become like the person of Jesus, and when I see him face to face, I'll be ready for it. Because I'm going to have the band come out, and I want to pray this for us and over us today, and I begin to ask God to move in our hearts, in our minds, in a special way during this series. Would you pray with me? Father, by your power and your Spirit, I pray today that you would help us to experience your love, and that it may abound more and more in each and every one of our lives. God, help us to know how deeply you love us, how eager you are to forgive our sins, how willing you are to have mercy on us. And help us as we look around at life to see your love for us more and more. God, I pray you would teach us how to love people, the good, the bad, and the ugly, Lord, just as you love us when we are good, bad, and ugly. I pray, God, that you would give us the courage, Father, to choose what's best, even if it costs us greatly. Help us to reach higher, to best decisions as we discern how to spend ourselves, our time, our money, our energy, our focus. And I pray for each and every person in this room, and Lord, myself foremost, that you would cause us to become like Jesus, filled with the fruit of righteousness, pure, blameless, mold us from the inside out, and make us into something, God, that we could never be on our own. And in it, and throughout all of it, God, help us to experience your joy as you rejoice in us along the way. Meet us here, Lord, even now.